This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit is back on the program. He's a best-selling author, educator, relationship columnist, and a certified hypnotherapist. Frank joins us on the line once again via Skype-to-Skype communication to talk this time about May-December relationships. Hi, Frank.
How you doing, Peter?
Doing just fine. Thanks for being on the program with us once again. So we used to hear a lot about May-December relationships. Of course, they still go on, but do they turn as many heads as they used to?
Not as many as they used to. People are a lot more accustomed to seeing the whole concept of May-December relationships, people dating with at least a 20-year age gap, and it's not turning heads as much, although there is still more of a stigma of a much older woman with a younger man than there is about an older man with a much younger woman.
The so-called cougar situation.
Exactly.
Even though, as you say, there is still a bit more of a stigma, even that has changed a little bit because while people might look negatively toward it to a slight degree now, before it was just like forbidden.
It was more than forbidden. It was actively discouraged. People would step in and use shame and guilt and how could you and why are you wasting your time? This relationship can't go anywhere. The only reason you're getting together is for sex because there's no way you're ever going to produce children in this relationship. And that's really a big part of the underlying reason that it was a stigma. Nowadays, people tend to mind their own business, live and let live, do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't interfere with my life. And if a couple of people are deciding they like each other's company and they're getting together, they're starting to understand it's nobody's business as long as no one is being hurt.
Okay, so if we're also accepting of this nowadays, are there any pitfalls along the way, anything that should be of concern for someone getting in a May-December relationship, regardless of which end of the year you are in?
Okay, let's be realistic here. A May-December relationship means that there are some bigger risks you take than dating people in your own age group. And that is the chances are much higher that the older partner is going to die off years before the younger partner does. Now, with all that said, we do have cases where people are in the same age category and someone dies either from natural causes, an accident. It can happen, people die in work-related situations. So there is no guarantee. Anybody can, step out on the sidewalk one day and an accident happens and they're gone. With all that said, if people are dying of natural causes and your partner happens to be 20 or 30 years older than you, chances are very high that you're going to be the surviving partner if you're younger. So if you are thinking about wanting to be with somebody long term and they are much older than you, you do have to realize that the odds are against the two of you having as much time together as a couple who are in the same age group.
But I guess, some people could just look at the odds of the situation. The reality is that sadly, especially if you're talking marriage, more than 50% of relationships break up. So if you get into a relationship even with someone of your own age, chances are, even if neither one of you dies off, that you still won't be in for the long haul.
That's right. The statistics are against that. The question is, are you willing to hedge your bets and see if you're going to be part of that 50% of marriages that do survive and to have a partner for long term? In addition to that, there's always the question of whether or not you're going to have kids. An older man and a younger woman, statistically speaking, do have a chance to start a family, regardless how old he may be. A man does not have the same kind of biological clock that a woman does. If he decides that he has a younger partner, a younger wife, he can start a new family at any time. The same cannot be said of older women and younger men. For this reason, a lot of older women are starting to find out that these young guys enjoy being with these women, but don't want to commit to them. Some of these younger guys are just enjoying the company. They're enjoying the sex. Many of the younger men that I speak to use the reason that they don't need to use protection when they're sleeping with an older woman because she can't get pregnant. And a lot of older women also don't practice safe sex for this same reason. However, in the United States, 10% of all new AIDS cases every year are women over 50. So this is starting to get very serious. There are a number of risks that people don't factor in. And for older women who aren't dating younger men, if that younger man does even want the option, and I'm talking about he doesn't necessarily know if he wants his own kids, but he would like to keep his options open, the chances that he's going to commit to an older woman for very long term is actually the odds are against that. And a lot of older women are starting to realize that, yes, they're enjoying themselves, they're having fun, but any expectation that this is going to be a serious ongoing relationship that is going to, last forever, the odds are just very much against it.
Although in this day and age, with even in younger women, fertility and younger men too, obviously, because it takes two, with infertility being an issue, more and more people are having children with surrogates, and therefore the idea that a woman is past childbearing age isn't really an issue anymore.
I work with couples who are struggling and they are looking at surrogates. Let's be mindful, though, that not everybody can afford it. These are very, very expensive practices that only people who have the money can afford it. I have counseled single women who were debating, should I wait to see if I get married, or do I have the child on my own before it's too late? Some women tell me that the organizations they work with won't work with these women if these women turn 40. So in their late 30s, they're opting to have kids on their own. And if they're using any sort of fertility treatment, these things are very expensive. So yeah, it is an option, but it's an expensive option. There's no guarantee. And even after you spend all that money, you still may wind up in the same situation as when you started. So let's also keep in mind that in cases where a surrogate sometimes is used, one parent doesn't always necessarily bond with the child. At one time, if a man could not father a child with his wife and she would go to a sperm bank, she would have a stronger bond with the child because it was half hers. And a lot of those marriages divorced, statistically speaking. So there are other considerations here.
So getting back to May-December relationships, let's just define what that is. And by that I mean, how much of an age gap does there have to be for it to be considered a May-December relationship?
From what I've experienced, 20 years seems to be the minimum number. If there's a minimum 20-year age gap, it's considered a May-December relationship. Sometimes you have couples that are 10 years apart and people don't really bat an eye for that. 15 years apart, they're really not going to call it May-December. But at the 20-year mark, there's something about the 2-0 that seems to put it in their heads that, okay, this is a generation apart.
Isn't also one of the reasons why it's certainly more acceptable nowadays than it was generations ago is that the idea of what an older person is, be they male or female, is radically different from what it used to be. I mean, let's look at and I know that the people who work in the media are not exactly the role models of society, but looking at a Jane Fonda today does not equate to someone of her age 40 years ago.
I would have to agree with that on some level just because the social norms and the expectations of what was desired from a person of a certain age, people were basically told how to behave and what they should want and what they should expect, including things like if you are a widow, the chances that you would get married again are slim to none. You should just devote yourself to your children and your grandchildren, and getting remarried, well, that's just preposterous. You don't need to. And that's all changed. Now you have people who are starting their lives over at various ages, coming out of divorces, broken families, separations. And what we consider now to be an active 50-year-old, an active 60-year-old, when someone isn't even 70 and then passes on, the argument is, oh, how young that person was. Because our life expectancy has increased, our expectations have increased. People now are starting to realize also that they may not die just a handful of years after retirement. They may continue to live on another 10, 20, 30 years if they're healthy and they take care of themselves. So we're going into a completely undiscovered country.
It's a fascinating topic indeed, Frank, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. People can check out your website, franktalks.com. What will people find when they go there?
Well, they're going to find my newsletter, where if you sign up for my newsletter at franktalks.com/newsletter, you get my 13th book, 400 pages, over 100 of my best articles that I've written over the last few years.
Frank, thank you very much for being on the program with us once again.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to the next time.
Relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check out his website at franktalks.com. And you can go to my website at thestufffile.com, go to the What's On page for this show, which is show number 0251, and you'll find the link to his site.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuph is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.